There's actually something else we need to consider when we're thinking about this whole situation with cancel culture. The question is always, why do people let it get this bad, right? We have people who were standing in our way for years finally waking up, usually after it's too late. And by that I mean, over the past maybe 6 or 7 years, I've been saying all along, we need to take the kid gloves off and come down on these NPCs hard. Because if we keep letting this cancer fester, the longer we go without fixing the problem, the more painful the solution is going to be for everyone involved, basically. But then, can't do that, because all the cucks, all the alt-centrists on our side come out, well, if you fight back in literally any way, you're just as bad as them. Oh, you don't want to make our side look bad. And then, over the past few years, I've actually seen some of these people slowly come around. Because as the clown world gets worse and more insane, as these NPCs keep getting worse and keep escalating further, even these alt-centrist cucks eventually start to realize, yeah, there's no negotiating with these people. We can't assume that they're just misinformed and missing the facts. All the facts are already out there. They are just operating 100% on emotion, and facts don't matter to these people at all. We can't reason with them. We have to shut them down hard. And every time I see one of these people who in the past was all about like, oh, we're just as bad as them if we fight back. Oh, well, my optics. Every time I see one of them come around and finally say what I've been saying for years, I'm just there like, I told you so. What the fuck have I been saying? If you had listened to me 6 fucking years ago, if it wasn't for people like you constantly holding us back, this problem would be resolved by now. But nope, just gotta let them run all over us. We just gotta bend over for them. Because if we fight back in any way, we're just as bad as them, right? Yeah, and these people don't learn until they themselves stand to lose a lot. Like, they lose their own YouTube channel or whatever. Then all of a sudden, say, oh my god, we need to do something about this cancel culture. Yes! Yes! I know! And, yeah, so the question is always, why do people let it get this bad? And it's not just things like dealing with the NPCs. It's the same shit with any problem, even like governments becoming totalitarian like we see throughout the entire first world. We are actually way past the time where us citizens needed to put our feet down and say, no, we're not going to let you do this anymore. But nobody did, or a few people did, and they ended up getting arrested. But in general, nobody does anything until it gets like Venezuela. So yeah, let's look at Venezuela, right? The vast majority of people only act when the price of inaction becomes certain death. And Turd Flinging Monkey did a good analysis of this, so if you guys haven't checked him out, you probably should. But he kind of points that out. So basically, once you are guaranteed to die by doing nothing, if you just leave things alone, that is what it takes to get people to get up off of their asses and risk possible death or other negative consequences to do something. So, like Venezuela, for example. Quite a few people in Venezuela knew the country was headed for a disaster, but they didn't do anything because, they made enough to survive. They had food on the table. And the alternative, here's the math they did. Here's their considerations. Like, yeah, my government's getting super authoritarian and totalitarian and all, but I still have a few good things. I'm able to live a relatively comfortable life. I mean, it's not really that bad. I mean, and then what's the alternative? So I could put up with the tightening clamps around my neck, the tightening noose, rather. I could put up with that. And hopefully it's not going to completely snap my neck until after I die of old age anyway. It's not going to matter. Or I could risk death by standing up to the government and doing something. So the vast majority of people didn't do anything because they weren't willing to risk certain or to risk possible or likely death or other consequences when they just like, this isn't too bad. It's like that picture of that dog sitting in hell, surrounded by fire. Like, everything's fine. And then it got so bad that people are starving. Now these people are sitting around like, now my choices are I either do nothing like I have been for the past few years and starve to death, guaranteed. If I do nothing, I'm guaranteed to die. Or I risk possible death by standing up to my government. That's what it takes. Nobody is gonna, or very few people are gonna do something at the risk of death unless the price they pay for not doing that thing is worse. So in this case, to get people to finally get off their asses in Venezuela, the penalty for not getting off of their asses had to be certain death for them to risk possible death by getting off of their asses. And that's how it's always been, and that's how it always will be. And I'm guilty of this myself. There's quite a few things that I would love to change, but I don't think it's important enough to risk my life for yet. And then I could definitely be contributing to this problem, that by the time it gets to the point where everyone starts standing up, it's too late. And we could have fixed the problem. But unlike those fucking cocks that I was just ranting about, I'm not getting in the way of the people who are standing up. See, that's my big problem with them. They see people who are actually trying to do something and make the world a better place, and they actively cockblock them. It's like, no, if you do this, you're just as bad as they are. Like, no, I am not going to approve of and sign off on what this person is doing. Nope, I'm not doing it. And they actively try to stand in the way and obstruct the people who are trying to rise up and actually do some good. So, to my credit, even if I personally stay on my fat, lazy ass and do nothing, I'm at least not going to get in the way of the people who are doing something. And fuck, maybe behind the scenes I'll support them a little bit. So that's the situation we're in. That's why a lot of these people either don't do anything or actively obstruct us until things get so bad for them that they finally wake up. And no matter how many times we point this out, it's never going to change. So, in my opinion, the best thing to do is learn to predict when things are going or where things are going and take steps to protect yourself from the fallout. And that's kind of like Alec Holovka. Like, look at him. Look at what happened to him. Learn lessons from him. He was an actual game developer. Like, whatever his personal views were, I'm just going to leave all that out. The fact is, he actually made his own games, and they were successful. But he was still dependent on the indie game community. Like, I guess, do you even want to call it a community? It's more like a cesspool, but he was still pretty dependent on them. Meanwhile, look at another example, Notch. He made Minecraft on his own, between jobs. I think he got a few friends to help him before he officially started Mojang, but most of it was him on his own. And what he made was way more successful, and he made more money than all these other indie devs combined by himself. That's what you should be aiming for. If you make yourself dependent on one of these communities and then they blacklist you, you're done. That was his mistake. Now, what I believe is the best solution is something like Comicsgate, where you have a bunch of independent creators who are each stand on their own, but they also get together to help prop each other up when they need it. Now, that's fine. I see nothing wrong with like-minded people getting together and helping each other out, as long as they don't become codependent. That's where it starts becoming a problem. So if you plan on jumping into comics or video games or any of that, do it on your own. Don't do anything with the established industry. You do not need to go to all of these indie game conferences and all that shit. Nah. You don't need them. Look at Notch. All you need to do is make something people actually want, get it out there, get the good word of mouth. Preferably, make your own platform elsewhere and start building up your audience. That's what you need to do. If you do that, if you build up your own audience independently of any of these other people, then if they blacklist you, doesn't matter. Imagine if Notch got blacklisted by the indie game community. I guess he kind of is now after he already has his billions. But after he released Minecraft, imagine if all these indie conferences were like, oh, we're not going to let Notch in here because we don't like this guy. They're the ones that lose out because he's more popular and has more money than them. Yeah, fuck that shit. So don't let yourself become dependent on these, especially if they're SJWs, because they will stab you in the back. Guaranteed. That's what they do. It's in their DNA. And alternatively, another important thing is there's no point in trying to save people who not only don't want to be saved, but who view you as the enemy for even trying. So, like these NPCs, you try to convince them that this cancel culture is wrong, they're not going to believe you, and they're going to call you all the bad things in the book until they're the ones that are on the receiving end. Then suddenly they're going to be singing a different tune. So you can't help them. You can't help these people. You have to let them suffer the consequences on their own. That's the sad truth right there, man. If any of you guys have any objections to what I just said or any alternate ideas, feel free to let me know. I mean, I'm not like these NPCs. I'm not going to block you on Twitter for disagreeing with me. I mean, my disdain for socialism, for example, is pretty well known, but I'm not going to ban you from my channel for talking smack to me because you're a socialist and you don't like what I said. There's that rant.